I am mining investor and editor of Resource Stock Digest, Gerardo Del Real here. The special guest this week, the editor of Digital Dispatch, Mr. John Carl. This is the 301st episode of our weekly therapy session that we call Investing in Bizarro World. We're going to talk about the markets. We're going to talk about what we're investing in. We're going to talk about how all roads lead to the Trumpster, including the silk ones. Austin should be lit the next couple of weeks. A whole heck of a lot of stuff going on. But before we get to that, Mr. Carl, how are you today?
I am doing very well, Gerardo. It is an honor to be here for episode 301. So first of all, congratulations on 5 years of doing this and now finally taking it to the next level. I'm excited. Thank you for having me.
It's funny. I feel like a podcast alcoholic, right? It's just take it one episode at a time. I can't believe this is the 301st one. Well, listen, I want to get started by talking about the overall indices. Everything is awesome, man. I mean, look, the Dow's up 300 points. The S&P 500 just touched a record high. The Trumpster wants lower rates. The Trumpster is getting $500 billion in investment in AI. We're going to talk about that. And look, say what you say. You can agree or disagree with this policy and in the way he goes about his business. But this podcast is largely going to be all about the consequential effect that Trump policies and a flurry of actions this week as it relates to the markets and future policy are having. He wants lower interest rates. He wants to cut the corporate income tax down to 15%. He wants to maybe eliminate the federal income tax. And he pardoned Mr. Ross Ulbricht, and we'll get to that here later on in the podcast. But I got to say, for all the things I dislike policy-wise and disagree with, there's probably just as many that I like that I'm hearing about this week. Execution will be key. And the reason you're on this week is because a lot of the themes surrounding Trump and the investments, the private investments that are coming in, those themes are themes that you are especially familiar with. So can you give people a little bit of your background and your specialty and kind of what you do for those that may not be familiar with you?
Sure, absolutely. So first and foremost, my bread and butter is tech. I've been a tech investor for over 20 years, really 25 years, depending on when we want to start counting. The very first stock that I ever bought was AOL. The second stock that I bought was Intel. The third was Cisco. So I've kind of been there from the very beginning. I also grew up in Northern Virginia, where AOL was a local number for me, which I realize that's not very relevant now today, but at the time it seemed so transformative, like all of these new technologies that could totally change the way that people interacted with each other and did things. So that was part of my life from a very young age. And then I'd say fast forward all the way to today, I'd say that it informs everything that I do and invest in. And so my publication, Digital Dispatch, I do with my friend and colleague, Chris Curl. And I've also got some notes from him. He's also our crypto guy, as you know, Gerardo. And boy, well, actually, this is the exciting thing about what's happening with, as you said, the Trumpster. Love him, hate him. There is stuff happening everywhere, and it's all related. We talk about AI, we talk about crypto. One of the more interesting things that I've noticed in these 20 years is that everything starts to creep closer and become the same thing. It used to be that one type of technology and another type of technology, the twain don't meet. No longer. There's not so much of a difference from AI and what that means for our data centers and what crypto means for our data centers. I think that we're seeing a lot of that come together. And what you were just talking about, the announcements that we've seen this week, we're seeing a lot more of that convergence of all those things.
Well, listen, I don't dabble in the overall indices, right? I keep an eye on them. Obviously, I keep an eye on the VIX. I keep an eye on the 10-year, the bond market, treasury yields, and all of that. But I've never invested in a blue chip. It's just not my cup of tea. I dabble exclusively in the high risk, high reward world of natural resource stocks and lean towards the highest risk exploration stocks, right? And so when you look at this market right now, and look, what Mr. Trump wants and what Mr. Trump gets are going to be maybe likely two different things. but some things are very, very real. Does he get lower interest rates? We'll see what the bond market decides to do. I'm of the opinion that eventually the U.S. is going to have to go back to QE in order to force rates down because the bond vigilantes are not playing the game with either presidency, right? I'm also of the opinion that private investment in America under a Trump administration that'll see less regulations and less red tape is going to absolutely boom. And I think we're seeing hints of just how lucrative that could potentially be with the Starlink announcement, right? That is a commitment by private commerce, private money, to be a $500 billion project for infrastructure tied to artificial intelligence. So Stargate is, look, the first of what I think is going to be many, many, many of these announcements, right? The people that are at the table, and coincidentally enough, a lot of them were in the first row during the inauguration, coincidentally enough, right?
Very coincidental.
I'm sure it's just a coincidence, right? It's like when assays all come out at the same time right before PDAC. That's another conversation. But look, when you hear someone like Sam Altman, right, the CEO of OpenAI, say, this will be the most important project of this era, are these overall indices sustainable to you, being that so many of these tech companies are the drivers of a lot of the price action that dictates whether the market goes up or down, right?
Right. Great question. So the short answer is even though I've been in tech, the one thing that tech investing has taught me, Gerardo, is never try and predict the future. Do respond to things that are changing and or disrupting the market. Obviously, I did that when I first invested into Netflix. I was like, oh, wow, this is disrupting everything. It's called Netflix for a reason. It wasn't meant to be DVDs by mail. It was meant to be a streaming service, in which at the time, that was, of course, very revolutionary, very disruptive. So I always try and follow the through lines for this, but I never try and predict the future. What I try and do is figure out who's going to be making the money, kind of like you do, really. Who's going to be making the money regardless of what happens, and then figure it out from there. So as you said, Stargate is absolutely very significant. $500 billion is what they're talking about for the initial investment. 100 million from 100 billion.
100 billion initially.
I know.
Yeah,
I keep
the numbers
millions
get big,
and
right?
billions. I feel I feel like I'm in Austin Powers here. Where
I love how logical you were being, John, and talking about, not assuming and not predicting and not doing any of that. And all I could think of in my mind when you had your very methodical, practical explanation of how you approach the markets and technology, all I could think of was, and somewhere in the world there were millions of dollars allocated to a Hawk Tuah coin.
Yeah, that's
Which is a perfect sign of the times we live in, right? You have like the methodical, practical, fractional approach to the stock markets and retracements and charts. And then you have Hawk Tuah girl over here fleecing people for millions, though. Y'all did it to yourself. Y'all should have known about that.
Yeah.
But anyhow.
Well, you'll get my thoughts on meme coins here in a little bit, or at least if we stick to the talking points.
No. We're definitely going to go ahead and do that. We got to talk Trump coin, Melania coin, and, soon to come, everybody in the Trump name office coin.
Yeah, so it seems they're kind of going down the list. But just to finish the thought on Stargate. So what I'm looking at is the amount of investment, where it's coming from, and where it's going. I think what's top of mind for me is that $100 billion of that $500 billion is going to come from Larry Ellison and Oracle. And I've been following Larry Ellison closely, because he is very flush with funds, or not only because Oracle as a business model is doing well, but because Oracle's move into AI is doing well. But here's to sort of answer your question to where I don't try and predict the future. Will they pull off this or that? I mean, obviously Elon Musk has already been throwing stones on X, saying like, oh, do they even have the money? Do they
He's
even
such
have
a troll. He's so petty. He's
I love
so
that
petty.
it's been 2 days and everybody's already fighting over what Sam Altman, I think this was just like 2 hours ago, said, don't worry, Elon, you're going to get an invite to come see Stargate. We'll make sure that you get to see it and you'll get a special invitation. I don't know if that'll calm him down or not, but anyway, but
Wealthy people trolling is one of my favorite things to see on X, right? It's just fantastic. There was another gentleman that said, well, I'm good for my 80 billion. And Elon said, I believe you have the 80 billion, but this guy over here, I don't believe this guy.
Yeah, well, that guy was Satya Nadella.
You got it.
The CEO of Microsoft. And yes, Mr. Nadella is very good for it. Microsoft also is flush with cash, especially due to their investments in AI. But I don't want to take this like too off course, but just to kind of finish my thought. So here you've got Larry Ellison with this $100 billion and this AI, and where will the revenue, come on the other side? Well, I also am following a very significant other $100 billion investment. It seems to be his go-to figure. Larry Ellison's like, okay, 100 billion. I don't want to think of other numbers, but he's putting $100 billion, and I know we're going to talk about this later, but $100 billion into nuclear technology, in particular, the SMRs, the small modular reactors, which is kind of the next generation of nuclear power plants. And Larry Ellison is right now the largest single investor in that technology, and he has even gone on record and said that from his standpoint, all of this AI technology can only be made possible with nuclear power, because the nuclear, whatever they come up with for the $500 billion Stargate, is going to have to run on a lot of juice.
I couldn't agree with you more. I was going to take it down the uranium path, right?
And obviously, I'm talking to the resource guy, but even what Chris, my colleague Chris, and I have been doing, we even talked about this. We're like, well, should we really be including these other things in our portfolio and in Digital Dispatch? But we actually added three. Well, they're pretty big companies, and they have sizable market caps, but compared to most energy giants, they're small. But we even added three essentially power companies to the portfolio. At first we were like, well, we don't want to get too off in the weeds and everything, but Chris and I just both agreed, look, you cannot have AI without electricity. You cannot have crypto, Bitcoin mining without electricity. You cannot have data centers for all the cloud computing and the Jeff Bezos, Amazon, everything, the Netflix, it's all running on a lot of juice. And so the three most recent stocks we added were power companies, and they're all doing really well. Like they're already the one in fact is pushing triple digits, and
nice.
It's just in a short amount of time. Like it's running away from us. So that's kind of part of our philosophy, is as much as possible the picks and shovels, the infrastructure that's going to make all this happen, regardless of whether they pull off their goals or not. And then, not to make this long-winded over here, but in 2019, and then again at the beginning of now I'm getting my dates mixed up. At the beginning of 2024, before AI was in the headlines, back when people were talking about chips and the recovery of the chip shortage from the pandemic, and they were talking about all these other new technologies, I'm like, let's just focus on the chips, on the design, and our number one, the stock that I'm sure people were sick of us talking about it, was NVIDIA, and it went to go on 1,000% gains since 2019. In the portfolio, I think our official recording is 663%. For readers who followed. But I mean, we kept recommending it, like, again and again and again. People could have gotten in and made 300% or even 250% for the last run up. We were telling people at each step of the way.
And hold that thought, because at the end of this, at the premium portion of the podcast, I'm absolutely going to ask you for a couple of picks. That's going to be
Sure.
a good treat for our audience, and obviously a thank you for those of you that are joining us on the premium side. So look, I'm going to do what I always do. I pride myself on being a relatively simple guy, is what I like to say. More AI equals need for more energy. Estimates are saying they need twice the amount of energy that the U.S. currently has. That can only come, and they're saying this openly now, from nuclear. That's going to lead to a uranium price and uranium run that is going to be one for the ages. I've said this for months. I come on here every week, typically with Mr. Nick Hodge, and we tell you that there's so many different ways. Forget the politics for a second, forget the differences, let's just look at this from a strictly capitalist perspective. There's so many different ways to make money right now. Uranium is a mega trend that's not going anywhere. Lithium is going to come back. I look at the gold market. It's sitting at $27.51 right now. That's going to hit record highs. Silver's firmly above 30. Copper's at 410, 411 on the spot, 430, 435, because it's sniffing out that infrastructure of the kind that we're going to require to make any of these things happen is going to require massive amounts of copper, right? And yet the US dollar still hanging in there at the 108 mark. But when you get Mr. Trump getting up there and I don't want to say begging, but demanding lower interest rates, one way or the other, he's got to figure out a way to get those interest rates lower. If you know anything about Donald Trump, you know he markets his ass off, and you know he is very, very good at making it to where people that have access to capital, and these are his best friends now, can get that money and that capital as cheap a baseline as possible. So does that happen through QE? Does that happen through, I don't know how it happens, but I'm pretty convinced he's going to be able to pull that off. So I can't stress enough, bullish on gold, bullish on silver, bullish on copper, really bullish on uranium. Lots of ways to make money. And now I have John Carl in here telling you how you can make money on the big companies. If, you just think, man, that Gerardo guy's crazy. He gets up there and he gets so excited and he's got all these ideas and he thinks everything's going to make money. And sometimes it works. And luckily we've had, a pretty good run here these last several years and off to a heck of a 2025. And we'll get to that later. But if that's too high risk, and I totally understand if it is for most people, listen to some of what John Carl has to say and some of his picks later on in this podcast, because that's a very liquid way to participate in this mega trend. This isn't emerging, but it's definitely not matured yet, right? Most people don't even understand what's happening. I can barely keep up with, all of the different apps and AIs and this and that. And I mean, it's really the speed of evolution in the tech space is unlike anything I've ever seen. And think of what you will of Mr. Elon and some of his antics and the stuff that he does. Be absolutely clear that the man has a brilliant mind for making things work. I just saw a rocket size of a skyscraper do a two-step in the sky and then go back to its base. I mean, who's doing that type of stuff, right? So it should be a fascinating, not just 4 years under Trump, but just forgetting the politics, it should be a fascinating 4 years looking at how consequential the policy is and how quickly it expedites this tech revolution that's happening. Because I think, again, I say all the time, we're in a silent Cold War with China that's not so silent anymore. And believe you me, that AI and controlling the technologies that are going to emerge from this is a big part of that next phase of this Cold War. Would you agree with that, John?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, and just to say something to what you were to there about adoption rates, I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but
It sounds so much fancier when you say adoption rates.
right. Well, but it's so significant. So for example, Facebook getting to 100 million users, I want to say it was again, I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, so don't quote me, but it was more than 5 years, and Instagram was a little bit less than that. And then other things to come out less than that. Well, ChatGPT, talking about Sam Altman and OpenAI, 4 weeks. So we are seeing, what used to be 6, 7 years, then 5 years, and now we're to when you can in a month pull out adoption rates of with 100 million users, and the fact that if Instagram and Facebook has a bunch of people coming in, that's great. That's social media. They can monetize that ads and whatever. But what AI can do is a whole nother level. Like, is literally changing work, is literally changing a lot of these other things. So yeah, we're seeing the adoption rates increase, and then, like you said, everybody is quickly realizing that in order to even have a seat at the table, they're going to have to be competitive. And that's why we're seeing what we're seeing with China. That's what we're
Yep.
seeing with these musical chairs of allegiances. Like, for example, and I don't want to get lost in this, but just to kind of prove what you were saying, everything that I was reading coming from Davos today, in the World Economic Forum, like Saudi Arabia is, I guess, becoming a closer friend because they want to do all of this stuff with AI. They want to do all this stuff with nuclear power. They now want to see at this table, while they clearly like the drill, baby drill. Well, maybe not our concept of drill, baby drill, but that they're looking for a seat at the table is what I'm saying. And they want that seat near us. And so that's, Mohammed bin Salman, the crown prince, is there and ponying up money for all of this as well. Like, essentially saying that it's happening very quickly.
Yeah, it's absolutely happening very quickly. The other thing that's happening is, and I told you this was going to be largely about, first week or so of Trump policy wants and needs and all the other stuff. But he just signed, and this is in the last couple of hours, an executive order to develop a national crypto digital asset stockpile. Can you explain to simpletons like myself, John Carl, what the heck a national crypto digital asset stockpile is?
Sure. Well, wait.
The short version, just the simple, like,
Oh,
I'm
yeah,
in
yeah.
fifth grade
Well,
version.
So essentially, I mean, really, the simplest version is just owning and keeping some digital assets in the way that you would store any other asset. So, for example, gold, we've got Fort Knox. I think they've opened the door of Fort Knox, a handful of times in decades. So it just sits there. It's inert, but it is sort of backing up what we're doing. Well, I think the same idea is to do the same for Bitcoin, but what's great about a digital asset is that you can store it in a more dynamic way, and you can access it in essentially what a digital stockpile is just owning the stuff and keeping it. And we have good incentive to do so because the US government already has a lot of this stuff, which they have seized from bad actors from a variety of places. So we already have billions of dollars worth of this stuff. Actually, this is a good point because, sometimes people will be like, oh, wow, Bitcoin, it's totally worthless, or even the previous administration, the way that some of the people in the administration were talking about these digital assets were as if they are this valueless thing. And yet, when they seize this stuff and when they sell it at market price for real dollars, I'm like, okay, well, you're saying that you're not believing in it, but you just sold off, $3, $4, $5, $6, $7 billion of that. They didn't have any problem doing that. So essentially, it's just taking that it's just taking that and then using it to keep the balance sheet positive. And
Can I ask a stupid question?
Please do.
So, again, I don't care who did it. I don't know if it's illegal, but the shit sure in the hell was immoral. What's the difference between a Trump coin and the Haktua coin? Other than people bought the Trump coin and people bought the Haktua coin, but then people didn't buy it anymore.
Oh, right. Well,
fundamental difference. What does one do that the other doesn't do?
So as of this exact moment, so the Trump and Melania coins and many meme coins like them, they have quick rises in value, but the underlying equity is still there, meaning that it's the people that started it haven't removed their equity from it. So what happened with the Haktua coin is it's what's called a rug pull. It's where the people that launched the thing have an enormous amount of liquidity and they wait until everybody puts their money in, and then they remove all of their liquidity in one moment. and thus the price collapses,
But
and then everybody's
but that explains, and not to cut you off, but I don't want to lose this thought here. That explains the price fluctuations. I understand that part. I am asking about utility. Fundamentally, what does a Trump coin give me that the Hagtua coin does not? All other things being equal.
right. Well, so far they haven't removed their primary liquidity, so that's good. So
Okay.
that means you can make money off of it in the same way you can a lottery
But
ticket.
why can I make money off of one and not the other? What does it do for me that the Hagtua coin can't do for me? If all of the Trump coinsters, that's what I'm calling them, the Trump coinsters, if all the Trump coinsters decided they want to go spit on that thing with the Hagtua girl,
I love that you're able to work in that joke too.
then would it, the Hagtua girl's coin, rise exponentially the way the Trump coin? What I'm trying to say
Correct.
is I don't
Yes.
see the difference in what either of them does. They seem like the exact same thing to me.
Sure, had the rug pull not happened, had they left their liquidity in there, there would be no difference.
Got it.
And they currently have the same amount of utility. So and
Okay.
here I might as well share my thoughts on the meme coin
Absolutely.
thing. So
And later on, I'm going to ask you for a pick on a meme coin as well. So
sure,
if you don't have one, that's where,
no, I do. I
Good.
can
So stay
meme
tuned for
coin
that,
all day.
folks.
But
I love it.
well, actually, here. So I've actually this week has been a little bit disappointed. So, and I should preface this with, so Chris and I have our shared tech publication, and then Chris Curl, I don't want to take anything away from him in the sense that he's our main crypto guy.
Sure.
He and I both are crypto investors, and I personally am very invested in crypto. I don't write about it as much as Chris does, but I'm very involved with it, at least with my own portfolio, and in fact, that's what a good portion of my money is in. So speaking of the Trump coin, so yeah, I would actually say that it's kind of been in many ways a disappointing week because during the inauguration, during the first days, Trump wasn't talking about a lot of the things that he had at least given, that he had mentioned before about like all this Bitcoin mining and infrastructure investment, or how to like legitimate platforms where the blockchain and cryptocurrency can occupy a more responsible, better role in our financial world. He wasn't talking about any of those, and instead did this cash grab with the meme coin. I didn't like that. A lot of people in the industry didn't like that.
On all political sides, by the way. Let's be absolutely clear. Like, I have Republican friends that are like, that was a pile of, you know what? I have people on the left, of course, that just want to jump off a fucking bridge, but they wanted to jump off a bridge beforehand.
Right, exactly.
But yeah, but be absolutely clear. It was unethical as all hell. I don't know if it was illegal, but my Lord, y'all, again, speaks to the times that we're living in, right?
Right. But there is a very important point in here, and it even comes back around to what you and I were talking about in trying to predict the future and in the tech space and everything. And that is coming back to those fundamental things. So the thing that I love about the Trump coin, and this is the only thing that I love about the Trump coin really, is that everybody got to see firsthand that something that had zero market cap could go to a $15 billion market cap in a single day. So how did that happen? It didn't happen by magic. It happened using, and I'm going to highlight two of the platforms that made it possible. It happened because of the Solana blockchain. So the Solana blockchain is the third largest blockchain, or fourth, depending on how you want to count it. But essentially, it enables different transactions the same way Bitcoin does, the same way Ethereum does. But unlike those things, it's faster, it's lower cost, it's higher security, and it's the only thing that can keep up with doing something as crazy as launching a meme coin and going from zero market cap to $15 billion market cap in a single day. So
it sounds like the 25-year-old model.
Yeah. So, but what
versus
we
the
saw
70-year-old model
in real time was what Solana can do, and that I really like. And in fact, and Chris sent me earlier a statistic that Solana crossed $200 billion in traffic in a week. That's never been done before.
Right.
Not by Bitcoin, not by Ethereum. And I'm tipping my hand here, I'm a huge Solana investor. But the reason that I like Solana is because it offers this utility, which really we've been kind of waiting to see. Like, people ask, like, what can this thing do for me? Well, it can do all kinds of things, but one of those many things is it can enable transactions at a speed, at a security, and at a low cost we're not getting that from our banking system.
Yeah,
We're not getting. I paid $25 the other day to make a transfer from my one Chase account to my other Chase account. I'm paying Chase to use Chase. I don't.
Yeah, no. It's absolutely
that
bonkers.
transaction would have cost me 0.004 cents on the Solana blockchain. And then the other thing is Radium, and this is probably a name that is new to many people, but Radium is a liquidity provider. They have liquidity pools, and you're probably thinking, like, what the hell is that? It's essentially what enables, if you want to buy something, who are you paying for it, and who's going to give you the thing, right? So if you want to trip,
it's a perfect segue into my.
Who are you gonna pay? So
Yep.
who everybody paid to make this happen was Radium. Radium holds a bunch of Trump coin on their thing and a bunch of other stuff, and they're the ones that actually let it. So my two biggest, Radium is my largest single holding, and let me put it this way: I bought most of the Radium that I have in 2023 for 20 cents. It's now at $8.
Yeah,
so
that's good work if you can
get
get
40x your money. My stake in that is worth well over six figures, and is definitely one of the better investments that I've ever made. And actually, I think that it's going to keep going from $8. But this is where, forget the meme coins, forget the Hawk Tua or the Trump or the Baron Trump coin. There's an Ivanka one. Forget all of that. Like, Radium is what's making this possible. And while people are chasing all of these lottery ticket types of things, that's what's making the magic happen. And it could also do so much more than just this, and I won't get lost in the weeds in that. Meaning, like, what I love is, long story short, the world's got a real-time demonstration of $0 to $15 billion single day. Nothing else can do that. There's a saying in the crypto world for Solana fans. It's called Opos, and it's only possible on Solana. I even have a little clock that has the... Anyway, but it's real. But we got to see that, and even though we didn't get what we wanted yet from Mr. Trump, we got to see what Solana could do.
Well, this is, again, the boy's been working. We just got news that he signed an executive order, another one, to declassify the JFK, RFK, and MLK Jr. files. Bravo to you, Mr. Trump. Kudos. I want to see if this actually goes through. I got to say something. Trump really fucking hates the FBI, man. Trump really hates the FBI. So a story that I have followed for years, and that has, not a hometown, because I'm not from Austin. I live just outside of Austin, but definitely a local connection here. 11 or 12 years ago, a gentleman by the name of Ross Ulbricht created what was called the Silk Road. And the Silk Road, to make a long story short, was on the dark web, and it facilitated the anonymous purchasing and sale of whatever you wanted to buy or sell, right? And it made it to where it wasn't traceable. And if there's something the government does not like, is it not being able to get its pound of flesh. And so they arrested Mr. Ulbricht, and they charged him with running this network that facilitated, and let's be clear, any network, the US dollar, anything that has a transactional component to it is going to facilitate everything from prostitution to murder to illicit drug use, you name it. There were also a lot of very, very valid and legal services that were offered on the Silk Road. But the gentleman's here from Austin. And Mr. Trump, true to his word, said, if you elect me, he spoke to a libertarian crowd, and I lean libertarian on a lot of things. And he said, you elect me, I'll pardon him. And not only did he pardon him, but man, did he write a beautiful statement, right? And so the statement basically said, the same disgusting fucking people referring to the FBI that prosecuted Mr. Ulbricht. And by the way, he got 2 life sentences for creating this platform, folks. He wasn't found guilty of murdering anyone. He wasn't found guilty of running this, big network of drugs or anything else. They gave him 2 life sentences. Trump comes out, pardons him. I hope I walk in on the party in downtown Austin one of these days, because that's probably going to be epic. But that pardon, coupled with him releasing the JFK, RFK, and MLK Jr. files, if anybody knows their history, everybody knows the FBI was involved, amongst other alphabet agencies, in all 3 of those assassinations. So any thoughts on the Silk Road or the government's approach? I want to spend just a couple of minutes on that, and then I definitely want to get to the premium portion of this podcast so we can get some picks from you and we can get some meme coins from you, and then I'll give you all my thoughts on a couple of companies that I got a chance to catch up with at the Vancouver Resource Investment Conference. And I got to say, it was extremely well attended. The energy felt as good at a mining conference as it has in maybe a decade for me. And a lot got done. It was really, really productive. Tons of meetings. A lot of good came out of it. It's going to be a good year. Volatile, but good year for us in the resource space. But thoughts on the Silk Road, Mr. Ulbricht, or the Trumpster going after the FBI with veracity?
Yes. Well, first off, yes, I'm a longtime libertarian myself. And let me tell you, I've been becoming a harder core libertarian by almost the hour this week, but over then the past administration as well, and the ones before that. So I think a lot of things have been leading up to this moment. I myself am not a Silk Road expert. I've read a bit about it. Essentially, I think it's great that he's being pardoned. It did turn into being a much bigger deal in a way that maybe I don't fully understand, other than, like you said, this is putting a bit of a check and balance on the 3-letter agencies and what they do. And that's been needed for a while, especially since we keep having more 3-letter agencies that keep popping up. In fact, I've now lost count of all the with the Homeland Security and there's the this, the that. So yeah, I'm hoping that this is a good step in that direction, and hopefully it makes up for some of the maybe 1 step forward, 2 step backs in other directions. I hope that he's not going to be. Yes.
I'm not going to say it out loud, but Donald, can you go get the IRS 1 dot for me, please?
Yeah, exactly. Well, now we have the External Revenue Agency as well. That's about that I like. We'll see how that works out. But at least other people can do it.
Listen, it's interesting times. It's been awesome having you on. I want to thank all of you that are watching the free portion of the podcast for listening in. I'll definitely have a broader recap on the Vancouver Resource Investment Conference for you all next week. To summarize, bullish on all things commodities. The Trumpster has had himself a heck of a first week. It's going to continue to be interesting. I want to thank John Carl for coming on. This was the 301st episode of our weekly therapy session that we call Investing in Bizarro World. Have a great week, everyone. There's a whole day left in the weekday and then a weekend. You never know what's going to happen between now and the next time that we chat, folks. So be safe, take care of each other, be kind to each other, go do something nice for yourself, and have a great end to your week, folks.